welcome to this week's episode of the Making It in Asheville podcast. This is your friendly neighborhood podcast where each week we sit down with a Asheville-based entrepreneur, artist, creator, community leader, and ask them what they are making in Asheville and how they are making it in Asheville. And this week we have a multi-hat wearer and a becoming friend of the podcast, and to kind of zoom out, what I see from Logan Hall, our guest this week, is just creativity. And so that creativity shows up in graphic design, brand identity, and visual work, and also comes out in music. And so, Logan, I'll leave it to you to introduce yourself quickly to the Making It in Asheville audience. How do you talk about what you're up to in Asheville?
Yeah, of course, Tony. Thanks for having me. I've been a fan of the podcast for quite a while. Super stoked to be on it. But yeah, I'm a graphic designer, illustrator, who works in brand identity primarily. Also general graphic design and illustration, work my chops in that too. Yeah, and love just working with brands, businesses, bands, whoever needs any visual work. And yeah, that leads into also me playing music. I'm a bass player in a band called Pink Beds. We are fairly new, cooked up an album over COVID essentially, and just getting into the mix of things right now as shows are opening back up. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you for introducing yourself. And I'll say, you can't pin when or how necessarily, but I saw, Logarhythm Creative? Is that your Instagram handle?
Yep, I operate under Logarhythm Creative.
And so I saw that real early when we moved to town and have been following you from the Making It in Asheville account, I think, for a very long time. Your design has a very, I'll say, cohesive and specific look and feel, at least to me. How do you describe what kind of designs you're into? I know there seems to be a very wide range of looks and feels that could happen. Do you think about your design as trying to fit into a specific type, strategy, style?
Yeah, definitely. Style is something that's really hard to put your finger on, especially for yourself. I think it's just a culmination of everything that you've seen and done, honestly. And hopefully if it comes off as unique, that's a plus. But yeah, I don't try to follow trends or, anything specific, or so it just comes out as, hopefully you.
Heard. And there is now a point where when I am scrolling and I see a thing, I kind of say, oh, I'll bet that's, Logan. And often it is. And so whether or not someone who knows more would say that is totally unique, I now have a sense of your look and feel, and I really dig it. And then I guess it was not so long ago, but months ago, I pieced together, with the help of John, our producer on the podcast, that you are also part of a really good local band. And so which came first? Was it music and playing guitar in your house, or was it sketching and designing? I've asked the question in the past. What is your first language when it comes to creativity?
Yeah, definitely. Actually, for me, they kind of coincide. I first started playing music late middle school, early high school. Loved the rock and roll gods, wanted, to play guitar and stuff. But yeah, as I met more people, everyone needed a bass player. I primarily play bass in bands right now. Everyone needed a bass player, so I just started playing bass with some friends in high school. And as you do that, everyone needs essentially a graphic designer, someone to do the brand branding, yeah, so it kind of went hand in hand. And actually, at my high school, I was fortunate enough in a small high school. I grew up in North Wilkesboro, between up in the mountains, like
Sure.
in northwestern North Carolina, between Boone and Winston. Was fortunate enough that our small high school had a graphic design program that was funded. Yeah, it was actually really rare, but it was funded by Lowe's Hardware, which was a major corporation in the town. So yeah, we had some sweet Macs and just kind of learned to do that and promote the bands that I was playing in there.
I love that story. That makes a lot of sense. And I'm thinking back. I have like a very special part of my heart and my mind for, you know, young bands. One of my all-time lifetime best friends, I met in college, and he's a singer-songwriter, and he's always had like a band project. And thinking back to those early days of, you know, designing flyers for the show that was happening on July 4th at, like, you know, the retail store in downtown and the two towns over. Like,
exactly.
It was so important.
Don't get me wrong. It was, yeah, it was super bad, I'm sure. But yeah, somebody had to do it.
No,
I feel like that.
I don't think.
That's
go ahead.
Like, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I doubt it was bad. I think it was like perfect and exactly what it had to be or what was appropriate at the time. And I think of some of the more powerful, at least to me, like creators today. And I think like there is so much that's learned in those early days that can inform a real, lasting stylistic like approach. And so
definitely, I think it's like it's a definite common thread with graphic designers is either you started playing music, some sort of creative outlet like that, and also skateboarding. People that were skateboarders also turn graphic designers, illustrators a lot.
Yes. All right. So, how, like, it's so funny. You think back to like the stories of Steve Jobs or, you know, Bill Gates, you know, by chance having the early computing systems in their grade schools or high schools. And so you had a version of that in your high school, which allowed you to do graphic design. So you help me think about how it's progressed. You run your own kind of creative agency, creative studio today. But how did it start? Where did it take you from high school?
Yeah, definitely. Since I was in that program in high school, I jumped right in at college. I went to Appalachian State and graduated from the graphic design program there through the art department. After that, I worked in a small marketing agency in Boone for a year after I graduated. Stayed in Boone because I was playing music at the time.
What was Boone like at the time? I hear it's cool. I also hear that, you know, it's a college town. So I don't know what to make of Boone yet. Haven't been.
Yeah, definitely. Boone is maybe the most perfect college town. I think the population is like around 30,000 with 20,000+ of those being college kids. So
wow.
It's literally you're in a town of 18 to 22-year-olds, which is a crazy thing in general. But it was a lot of fun. School's great. Design program was really formative. Yeah.
Cool. And so then, what happens next? You work in Boone for a year after school. Primarily, it sounded to stay in maybe a band or two. Am I right?
Yeah, so I graduated in 4 years, and I was in a band that we were playing quite a bit around there. So I just decided to stay in Boone to play some music and really cut my teeth freelancing that first year. I like interned and worked in a little marketing agency there, but quit that to freelance just during that year. Just kind of hustled at it, got some clients on the internet, just in a very rogue fashion. But yeah, it worked out. Made enough money to stay afloat and play some tunes there. After that, I moved to Boulder, Colorado. Just because I had caught the Western bug all throughout college. Beautiful place. I worked in a few agencies there, freelancing for some cool clients. Osprey backpacks, PepsiCo.
Oh, wow.
So that led to like some cool clients there. But after that, it was just kind of on and off. So I took an in-house position with a large cannabis company in Colorado, and that was an experience in itself.
I describe this experience. Love to attempt to understand.
It was actually really cool. Like in general, in-house, I probably wouldn't have seen myself working in-house with one company. But this was a cool opportunity because it was a family of brands. So it was ran kind of like a small agency in itself. So we had like 5 or 6 different consumer-facing brands, and each had their own personality and tone. So yeah, it kept things exciting on the work front. And then also a very cool company culture. Everyone was essentially in their 20s to early 30s, even like the owners. So that led to some fun stuff.
Sure.
Outside of work.
Here's a question for you, right? So at this point, you've had several years of agency, several years of freelance design experience, and now you're stepping into this agency or in-house design role that feels or at least rhymes with what it would be like to work at an agency. What are some of the skills or lessons that you're picking up in these early days? Does it have to do with setting price expectations, setting revision limits? Is it, do you hop into this cannabis company and realize that, oh man, they're running it more like a factory in terms of like you need to produce stuff all the time? What are you absorbing early years of graphic design work?
Yeah, definitely. With the Colorado company, I learned a lot about consistency within brands and how everything should be. Shouldn't switch things up, even though we are working on individual brands. All those brands need to be the same everywhere you put them. Honestly, I learned a lot about just the business side of how a large business can be run, aside from design, because that's like I've been working in design forever at that point, but never like saw the inner workings of how you interact with a sales team and how you interact with quality control and all these other departments. So that was a really interesting thing to learn for sure that I wouldn't have gained otherwise.
And does that feel like perhaps one of the higher output moments in your time? Like how big was it? Was there a team, or were you the team for graphic design?
We had a small marketing team. There was a director, a couple of marketing coordinators, and then me and another designer.
Wow. And I imagine that's a pretty high volume of output across 5 or 6 brands.
Yeah, definitely. We're cranking stuff out all the time.
Cool. And so you're in-house, but perhaps the mountains of North Carolina called you home. What happens next? How long are you in Boulder?
I was only there for a year.
Okay.
Yeah, I was with a partner at the time, and she took a job back in North Carolina because we moved there after App State. We were both together there. Ended up moving to Charlotte actually for a year and a half. Yeah. Thankfully, the company was actually going through some restructuring, and I was able to work remote, like way before remote was cool. And ended up actually working with them 2 years, I think, remote. I was in Charlotte, was playing in a band there. Let's see, I was only there like a year and a half, and then some opportunities arose and found my way back to the mountains where I wanted to be.
I love it. So this next step into Charlotte, I'm attempting to tease out if there are lessons, right? Did you, you took maybe any job and it was fulfilling enough? I mean, 2 years sounds like it might have been the longest run so far at a single place. What?
No, I was with them for 3 years.
3 years. All right. And this isn't the cannabis company. This is a Charlotte-based something.
No. This is, so I was able to work remote for the cannabis company in Charlotte.
Oh, cool.
When I moved. Yeah. So yeah, they were restructuring their company and like was taking on a lot of remote positions, so it just worked out timeline wise.
All right, right on. So yeah, all right. That makes more sense. I wasn't sure if you had taken a new job in Charlotte and that job was remote and it was okay, cool. So you're still at the cannabis company, and then opportunities show up in the greater.
And then once I moved to Asheville, I was still working with them too. So that was, this is a 3-year span, but it was moving around a little bit.
Right on.
Yep. So I moved to Asheville in December or so of 2018. Ended up quitting with those guys right at the end of 2019 to go off on my own at the beginning of 2020.
Sure. How do you feel about that timing? How'd that work out?
Honestly, it could have been worse.
Sure.
Yeah, everybody I feel like was going through this period of growth and change.
Yeah.
So it really worked to my advantage, honestly. And you also had the time. I hadn't really put together any of my work or shown any of my work online from any of those past jobs for the past 4 years or so. So it was time to gather, what I wanted to show to the world, organize the business how I would want to, and then gain clients. So honestly, knock on wood, it worked to my advantage.
So cool. I'd love to, if you don't mind, go into some of the details on that. When you think about presenting work today, does that look like setting up maybe a Squarespace website? Is it some sort of specific to design? I can't remember. There's some website that is really good for design portfolios. What does gathering and showing a body of work look like for you?
Yeah, definitely. I have a website, but majority of my traffic and what I do and show comes from a site called Dribble.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, Dribble. That's what you're thinking about. Yeah, but it's a great site. It's essentially just a social platform for designers, illustrators, anything visual. But yeah, you set up posts like you would on any social, and you tag them with relevant words. And a lot of times, like art directors or marketing directors, they'll use that platform to hire out people for whatever specific project that they need. So I've been lucky on that. Worked with some cool clients through that, and then also just Instagram. That's been a main one for me.
Sure, and that makes a lot of sense. When someone reaches out, right? So you mentioned you gather and you display or something similar to display, and then you talked about setting up a business the way that you would want to. The freelance Logan of 2020 versus the freelance Logan of 7 years or 6 years earlier. What are some of the differences? How have you decided to build your business this time with what you've learned over the last handful of years?
Yeah, definitely. The first little stint at it, it was essentially just getting anything that I could just to make some, get some cash flow. Now that I've honed skill sets and whatnot, it's more just focusing on a few key things that I think I'm good at, that I can, that helps my clients the most.
Sure.
Yeah, definitely. And that's brand identity, which is a small portion of branding, but usually it focuses in on logo design and the visual output, of brands. That, and then just because of my music background, I have a lot of music friends, music clients, music connections throughout the years. So different things in that realm or industry.
And so I'd love to talk about those kind of each, if you don't mind. When I think of someone needing brand identity, is it most common that someone has a strong sense of what they think they want, and then you have, maybe meaningful conversations to tease it out? How would it work? Or are you saying, you taking a totally blank slate, like, don't tell me anything, just tell me what's going on in your business and I'm going to tell you who you are? How's that work?
No, it's a very collaborative process. I could go through my whole process, but essentially I just like to meet with them. Obviously can't really do it in person over the past few years, or not a few years.
Yeah. Almost. It rounds to a few years.
Almost, yeah, totally. But yeah, like to meet with them, talk to them, learn about their business. That's one of the most fun things I think about what I do is I just get to learn about a lot of different industries and a lot of different things. Always keeps it fresh. Always keep learning and growing. But yeah, I like to meet with them, learn about their business. I send out a questionnaire just to get some specifics, likes, not likes. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And then you just kind of go into the dungeon and you start by hand drawing. Do you go right into, I'm going to make a guess and say Illustrator? How do you?
Yeah, also like to create like a collaborative mood board with them, and it sounds cheesy, but I use Pinterest.
Pinterest, yeah,
it's just a really easy way for people to pick things they like, colors, fonts, styles, whatever.
Cool. Yeah, Pinterest is for better or for worse, is probably the most slept on of all these social platforms. Been around forever, but when my wife and I want to talk about what are we going to do in the nursery, there's really only one way to start to strategize that, and that's with Pinterest. So it makes perfect sense.
Love it that you're using it the nerdy way. Love it.
You sort of
no.
It's like a perfect thing for trying to communicate what most people don't have language for, right? So I imagine there's got to be something that you've experienced in working in design where there are words and there are specific, there's art and science to design. And then you have to communicate with people who know perhaps nothing of the art or science of design. And how do you empower them to tell you what you need to hear? Well, give them a, login to Pinterest.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And then on the other end of that, after I've made something to show for them, I give them specific notes on either the history of why I'm doing what I'm doing, why I'm choosing this color versus another color, and just things to help drive home the meaning behind what I'm doing after we've collaborated on that.
And so on the music side, I'm wondering, are you interfacing primarily with people in a band? Are you working with managers, labels, people, trying to support a band? How does the music side of your world show up in art?
Yeah, at least for right now, I'm mostly working with regional bands. Some of them are on labels, but you would be surprised how much they leave up to the band to do.
Oh, wow.
So I'm mainly interacting with members of bands.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
And then correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like a little while back, I saw stuff that you put out that I could have sworn was, created with in some sort of design program, but they were photos. Do you also do photography, or is that just something that I might have thought I saw?
Yeah, I don't professionally sell photography, but I also, I essentially had a minor in photography, and I always loved it. I have a nice camera, and a decent eye, so
yeah.
I think you're probably mentioning a package design
piece,
that I had. So that was non-moving subjects, so that was a pretty easy one to get looking good. But yeah, I like to incorporate photography too, some in my design work. That's one little style vein that I go down sometimes. So yeah,
I loved it. I think that was a really cool thing. And the end, did you design the packaging? Was it a full circle? You did the packaging design and photography?
Yeah, exactly. The photography was mainly to show the packaging. Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful.
But yeah, that was one client that I work with long term, not like on a retainer basis essentially, but yeah, I've worked with them for the past year and a half, developing their entire brand identity. They went through like a rebrand and worked with me and another one of my partners that I work with sometimes on strategy. But yeah, that was like a big rebrand project for the past year.
Oh, well, congratulations. It looked absolutely beautiful. And to hard pivot, what's going on in music for you? So we went to Sarah and so the whole Making It in Asheville team took a trip down to Brevard not long ago. I'd love to hear what's happening with the Pink Beds, who are really good and had a mix of originals, which we love and you can listen on Spotify, but some really funky and fun covers for a very full 2-part set.
Yeah, well, first of all, appreciate that. This is definitely a very fun group. Really creative music, dancey, fun vibes for sure. All the dudes are really cool too. Been longtime friends with a few of them. We've all been in different bands and finally linked up during COVID to make an album when we were all just, kind of open and, just
quarantined in your own way. Yeah, needing to create.
Exactly. And we were all free from other projects. Just randomly, and it all came together. Yeah. So we're really just a fresh band with the new album that we're still promoting right now. And essentially with shows opening back up, we've had just a handful of shows so far, but we've sold all of them out. So that's pretty cool.
That is cool.
I mean, it's at lower capacity, obviously, because of COVID, but it's still cool to say. So we played at the show that you went to at 185 King Street in Brevard. We played 2 of those.
Very fun venue. Very fun venue.
Cool, right? Yeah. It's always been like a music venue, but I think in the past year or so that someone else, the brewers from Boojum, they bought it and put like a brewery portion into it and like opened up the back and like doubled the seating outdoors. So that, yeah, it's a really cool space. But yeah, we played 2 shows there, one in February, one, I guess, what was the one that you went to, late May or something?
Well, yeah. It's May now, so maybe April, maybe the beginning of April, May. Oh no,
late April, yes.
Yeah, late April, early May. That makes sense. It's not May now, it's June. Yep. Holy smokes, it's June.
And then we just played flying by. Yeah. But then we played those 2 shows, and then we played 2 shows at Grey Eagle last weekend and sold both of those out. So yeah, people seem to dig it.
Pretty incredible. I mean, it doesn't, I know, not much about most things, and I know not much about music, but it doesn't seem like it's common to start a band in a, recording session, right? Typically it's like, hey, let's, meet in the garage. I'm being perhaps too naive, but like, let's play a while, jam, let's come up with some songs, let's play them at shows, and then let's record what we have. And because of the pandemic, it seems like you guys have done the opposite, the inverse. And I think that's kind of crazy and cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good way to work, honestly. Create a product you're proud of before you take it out to the world. And I mean, that comes with also all of us playing music for a long time. And Aaron,
go ahead.
Aaron, the writer, he came out of a previous band with some material already that he'd wanted to kind of change up the vibe on. So that was a good starting point for it.
Sure. And I was just going to say, it's pretty clear that there's a lot of talent in the band. One of the things that I find myself doing is like, how much eye contact is happening in this band? Like, how are they cueing one another? How tight are transitions between songs, right? Like those to me, as not a music pro, but like are sort of like, they indicate either how much practice has happened, how comfortable the band is with one another, how much can go like perhaps unspoken. And I was very impressed at like how tight and fun and like in and out of whether or not it was like a proper jam, like, hey, we're going to do this for a little while and just everyone have some fun with it, or if it was scripted, hard to know because of how smoothly you transitioned in and out of moments like that.
Well, yeah, I appreciate that. We're still working on that portion. That'll come with time. But yeah, I mean, we hit the shed and definitely got a little set together that we wanted to be really tight.
Cool. Yeah. Well, I absolutely loved it. Enjoyed it. It was one of like the first things I've done out in a long time. And the venue made me feel particularly like, safe. It was open air and so, excited to start doing things like that again. Excited to see y'all perform more. I'm looking to the future now. What's got your attention? What are you excited about for maybe the rest of this year?
Yeah, we're working on new material constantly. We're really lucky because a couple of the guys are producers as well. Mm-hmm. And Aaron, the writer, like I was talking about earlier, he works at a studio, so we get free studio time. I'm a designer, so we get free design work, and those are literally the two major money contributors for a band that we got the hook up on. But yeah, we're working on some new material. We were actually in the studio last night, cranked out a couple of songs, or at least like the rhythm section for it. And we're putting out a single on June 25th that I'm super proud of. I think it's some of the best work I've done musically, and the production quality on it is really incredible. I think it's the best work Aaron's ever done so far. So
wow,
excited for that. Yeah, and it's cool. We collaborated with a few other folks from town. We got two of the players, Alex and Kyle from Empire Strikes Brass, which is like this horn section band. So yeah, we're gonna have a horn ensemble on this, and then one of our buds, Ryan Stigman, who plays pedal steel. And you would think those two things don't go together, especially with a group like ours, but it really does. The single's called "Waiting on the Day." You definitely heard it.
Yeah. Well, I'm a little behind the scenes. I am familiar, but I've not heard that version, and I cannot wait. So that's you said June or July 25th?
June 25th, I believe. Yeah.
Awesome. And some shows are coming up, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep. We just got booked on for this really cool show at Great Eagle with this Nashville band called Okie Dokie. They're pretty sweet. Check them out. But they've collaborated on their last album with some really good artists that I really like. Liz Cooper, Devin Gilfillian, Raylan Baxter, and they're just doing their own thing too. Right, they're just really great producers and songwriters. So
awesome.
That'll be sweet.
That is sweet.
And that is July 16th.
Cool. I will make a mental note. Those will be in the show notes of this page, this episode page on makingitinashville.com. I have perhaps one last question for you. It is a Venn diagram question. When you hear Asheville and community, what shows up for you?
Well, I think that's the biggest draw to this area, honestly. Like after living a few different places out west, especially, like a lot of cool folks everywhere you go, but especially like out west, people are very individualized. It's like a culture of people that you're not going to get that attached to because, everybody's going to be going their own way. It's just like a culture of visitors almost. But yeah, the community aspect about here is, I think, what, besides from the mountains, it's a beautiful, homey place. But yeah, the community is just great, very welcoming and warm. It's not competition really. It's like I was saying with that, more collaboration, which is a cool thing that you don't really get many places.
That response really speaks to me. I used to always feel, we moved to Asheville from Brooklyn, and one of the things that I only found words for kind of late in my New York experiences is how, especially in the areas of Brooklyn that I was in, I would say people who look like me or worked in the industries that I worked in, which is like technology, seemed very transient, right? Like it seemed like, well, I'm here now in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, but like this isn't home forever, obviously. And so I really, Sarah and I, we try to put as much time and energy into like, how do we counteract what we're aware of, which is like, we're not going to be in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn forever, but how do we show up and attempt to treat it like we will be, and air quotes, leave it better than we found it, which is a really perhaps weird statement. But I hear you when you say, Asheville, while there might be people who come and go, there is something that feels more lasting in the early relationships that we've built. Like it sort of feels like the people that we have, come to know and befriend are going to be like forever friends, which is not a feeling I've ever really gotten in New York.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, most people I speak to, it has that same effect on, I don't know, something in the water.
Something in the water, our number one export.
Yeah.
So, thank you for time. How do people find you, Logan, on the World Wide Web and support you?
Website is logarhythmcreative.com. Instagram tag is the same thing. And then pinkbeds is pinkbedsmusic.com. Tag is pinkbedsmusic.
Wonderful. We'll have links to all of that in the show notes. Logan, thank you so much for dealing with all of the technical difficulty. Listener, I hope that you experienced no technical difficulty on this episode. If you did, let's give a round of applause to John Dupree, our production engineer, who's going to make it seem seamless. But really appreciate the time.
We love you, John.
Really appreciate the time, Logan, cool. And I can't wait to support you and the band more moving forward.
Of course, yeah. Let's hang out soon.